Hello, today I'm going to be talking about substance abuse and addiction on my mind map. So, the first one I'm going to be talking about is the individual cause of substance abuse and addiction. And there are some biological causes. Some believe that there's a genetic predisposition. So, some are more likely to become an addict, and then some might be more likely to try just because of their genetics. The next would be the genetic reaction, and that would be like if you use the drug, you might feel a more intense euphoria than others. So both the genetic predisposition and genetic reaction will lead to more usage. All right. Next, we have the psychological causes, and the first is operant conditioning. So there are two forms. Well, there's two ways you can be reinforced. The first is direct, and that would be that feeling of euphoria we talked about earlier. So you take the drug and it makes you feel good. So it reinforces your mind that, hey, this is a good idea. We should do this again. But, and that will, lead to more usage. Then there's also the indirect reinforcement. So it doesn't come from the drug itself, but maybe from the things around you, like a positive social experience. So, use drugs at a group level and it goes really well. Maybe you connect and you think, hey, we should do that again. So, both those things lead to more usage. Next, we have predisposition personalities. So these are personalities like low confidence or self-esteem. And with drug use, short-term drug use, generally it can alleviate that for some people. They feel a little more confident, the fear is kind of lifted, so it will lead to more usage. And then long-term drug use, though, however, can make it much worse. You can feel worse about yourself, or your confidence can get lower, and then that will just lead to more usage because kind of trying to mask and hide from that feeling. All right, so next we have let me zoom out here, social causes. So there are quite a few social causes. The first we're going to talk about is drug culture. So drug culture is kind of just how our society's culture reinforces and encourages drug use. So some of those things are like popular music and festivals. You go to a concert and most people are drinking around or maybe smoking marijuana or using other drugs like ecstasy or, any of them really, but kind of each of those scenes have their own little culture. Then, our society is really ingrained with you drink at celebrations, you toast at weddings or grief even. You see the sad guy at the bar in movies, or your girlfriends say like, hey, he dumped you, let's go out. So there's just kind of some things embedded into our society when it comes to drinking and using. All of those things lead to encouraging use, or they encourage use rather. All right, the next one is going to be peer pressure. So peer pressure can come in a couple of ways, but the first we're going to talk about is social bonding. Social bonding is very important. Some people don't get that bonding experience at home, or maybe they haven't felt it before. So, they get a group of people saying, hey, come on, you got to do this. We're doing this. And they think, all right, this might be something I want to do. Plus, if they, did it already and they got that indirect reinforcement we talked about earlier, then it might continue on. Then we have survival mechanisms. Maybe they feel fearful of the people around them or want to fit in. All of those things can kind of encourage usage or use of drugs and substances. We also have family pressure. So, maybe family members use or drink. Family bonding, you grow up around the campfire, everyone's been drinking, and now it's your turn to take your first shot, things like that. Or even not the harder stuff, some families, they use the hard stuff together. I guess it just kind of depends on family. Then there's also family stress. Stress is a big factor with drug use, trying to escape those feelings. And then lastly would be the lack of family connection. So that can be really tough. You don't feel connected to anybody, and then you use drugs. It kind of alleviates that, or maybe you get connected to a group of people that does. So all those things really encourage more usage. Next, we have poverty. Poverty is a big factor. A lot of people living in poverty don't have a lot of resources, so they have a lack of stimulation. Drugs can be a great way to, stimulate your mind and kind of provide an escape, which can cause more use. Also, people living in poverty are living in harsher living conditions than people out of poverty. So once again, that can lead to causing more usage by providing an escape. Same thing with hopelessness. A lot of people living in poverty are surrounded by some pretty tough things, and maybe they don't believe that their life can be any different. So that can lead to, wanting to escape and cause more usage. And then lastly, the mirroring of family and friends, kind of back with that family and peer pressure. Everyone's doing it around me. Why wouldn't I do it also? So that one can also encourage use. And then we have inequality. Inequality is a tough one. It's very, it can be linked to poverty. A lot of people living in poverty are people of color or women, many women actually. And once again, it can kind of be an escape from those harsher conditions, or escape from the reality that they're living in inequality, really. So inequality can be linked to all sorts of things. It can be linked to that lower self-esteem we were talking about earlier, which can lead to more usage up here. It can be linked to, excuse me. It can be linked to that family stress. It can be linked to that lack of connection. Because a lot of people living in poverty, their families are working really hard to get them out of that, or just stay above water, or sometimes maybe their fathers are in jail, and we'll get to that a little bit later. The next one we're going to talk about is health issues. So alcohol and substances can lead to all sorts of health issues. We're going to be talking about death, disease, accidents, mental illness, malnutrition, and obesity from alcoholism. So health issues can be also linked to quite a bit. It can be linked to kind of that family pressure we were talking about earlier, the poverty and the inequality. And that's because, people dealing with health issues because of substance problems might not be able to go to work, or, if they did have a death, maybe the father died, now the mother is the main breadwinner, they're going to be, it's more likely that they will be living in poverty, or more likely that they're not going to get that close family connection. We also have accidents, mental illness, malnutrition. Oops, I already said those, excuse me. All right, we're going to head over here then. So over on this side, we have crime. So there's quite a bit of extra crime that happens because of drug use, or drugs and addiction. There's domestic violence, which can be traced back over here to the family pressures. There's criminalization of users, which is connected to inequality. There is inequality on its own, which, people of color are arrested much more frequently than white people. The war on drugs, a lot of those policies and laws have really unequal treatment because of the way that police biases are on people of color. We have laws created with drugs associated with minorities, like in the past with the marijuana and Mexican people and the opium and Chinese immigrants. So it's very obvious in those past that the laws were strictly created because there were drugs associated with minorities. But that is still prevalent today with what I'm talking about next, which is the prison percentage is way higher with Blacks and Latinos than it is white people. All right, so the prison percentage of being much higher for Blacks and Latinos is I think connected to many of the original causes that we talked about earlier. Those peer pressures, family pressures. If the dad is gone, the kid is going to be more likely to fall into peer pressure, fall into that drug culture, fall into poverty because it's one earner in the house, and inequality, which we discussed earlier. And then we're going to go over here to the war on drugs. Well, actually, the U.S. government response. So first, there are a couple responses we're going to talk about. Treatment is one. There's lots of detoxes, there's lots of rehabs, counseling, group therapy, medications, but unfortunately, only a small proportion of people stay sober. So it can be effective. It's just not making a huge dent. And then there's prevention. So we have like drug tests, and we have education, which is things like the DARE program, but those really don't have any significant effects. Next, we have harm reduction. So these are things like sterile needles, a safe place to use, drug court, designated driving programs. Sterile needles are really great in helping reduce disease and reducing deaths. Same with a safer place to use. Drug court has been good because instead of putting people in jail for minor drug offenses, they get to go to treatment. So at least some people do recover. Maybe the percentages aren't high, but it also gets people out of jail and out of the courts. So it saves the U.S. economy, a lot of money. We also have designated driving programs, and those are great because they reduce deaths because of DUIs and also saves the courts money. So unfortunately, the war on drugs has been shown to have more crimes. So there's a lot more organized crimes, a lot more turf wars, and a lot more police corruption, since people are kind of having to sneak around to produce and sell drugs. It definitely leads to more crime. Same with more injuries and deaths. A lot of innocent bystanders get killed because of the war on drugs. Same with police injuries and deaths. And then lastly would be bad products. So people maybe don't know what's in their drugs because they're being illegally made, and maybe don't know the dosage, so they can OD. We also have some pretty big economic financial loss because of so many prisoners that are in there for minor and bigger offenses, but the minor ones are definitely clogging up the systems. Same with the amount of resources that we're using for fighting the war. So we have, the police, the courts, all of that costs a lot of money. Lastly, the accidents. And then I accidentally must have forgot to kind of tie this into the rest of them. But definitely the war on drugs is, which I did link it over here. A lot of these policies and arrests are targeted on people of color. All right. And then the Global Commission response to the war on drugs, they just believe that that war is failing. They think that we really need to start prioritizing harm reduction and treatment prevention programs. When I say it's failing, I mean that all of this criminalization and all of this kind of war that we've been fighting, not much has changed. And it's been kind of proven that in the past, since the prehistoric times, people have been doing drugs. And, these things are not working so far. So if we can find a way to, educate people and help prevent it ahead of time, and maybe not with things like the DARE program, maybe create new policies and new educational techniques, maybe we can make a dent, because what we're doing right now is not working. They also think that it might be a good idea to do decriminalization. Once again, like I said, they believe that these tactics that we're using aren't working. So maybe we just need to get rid of them and try something new, which can even lead to legalization. All right, well, thank you. That is my mind map on substance abuse and addiction.